All right, hello friends. This is Tyrell and Dennis.
Welcome.
Back with Shepherd's Club. This time we want to talk about a subject that we hope none of you have to deal with, but we feel is a very good possibility that it could happen. We could have to deal with it, and that is nuclear warfare. We're going to be talking about different steps on what to expect during nuclear warfare, how to take shelter from nuclear warfare. And let's just start out with the very first thing that I feel whenever it happens, whenever anything happens, and you'll hear me say this in a lot of different videos, is deal with it. I mean, you don't have time to just freeze up and panic. Oh no, nuclear war, what do I do? I mean, there's a lot of people that are prepared, but once it happens, they just freeze up. You got to get over that initial shock. You've got to deal with it. The very first thing that you need to figure out is, where am I? Where am I? How can I get home, or how can I get to shelter? Dennis, what are some different ways, specifically, because, I mean, if you're in a city, I urge you right now to get out now, but because if you're in a city that's a potential for nuclear, I mean, it's going to come and go like that, and you're not going to make it. So no matter where you are, if you're currently at your house, or if you're on your way to work, or you're already at work, or visiting some family, friends, you need to establish, where am I? How do I get home? So basically, my first question is, how quick do I react? How fast can we get home? What are some of the first things that are going through our minds in the whole, where are we, how do I get to home, and or shelter, if that's the case?
First thing that comes to my mind and thinking is a lot of things that I grew up hearing about, knowing, and seeing, most of the younger generations haven't seen. That's like, I'm almost 50 years old. I was in high school during the height of the Cold War. People tried to not talk about it and all that, but I still saw a lot of the videos about civil defense, duck and cover. Those things were dying down and fading out when I was in high school in the 80s. But it's still something we knew about. We were still in the height of the Cold War. The Berlin Wall had not come down. East Germany was still an issue. Russia was still the USSR, the United Soviet Socialist Republic, for those that are younger. We were in a war with them. I got crippled up training, preparing to go in the military. And my thought was, I would one day be fighting the Russians. So, nuclear war was a big part of my growing up. Of course, with Mr. Welch being a little bit younger than me, the Berlin Wall had come down in his lifetime. And a lot of things began to change with that. So, where you are, that's where I'm getting back to it. This, basically, as he said, if you're in a major metropolitan area, if you're in one of the big major cities in America, and you know which ones I'm talking about, I'm not going to name them, but just figure they're most likely targeted. They're a target. If we go to war and it's nuclear, major cities are going to be hit with nuclear weapons. So, you're like, well, then I'm dead. It's done. It's over. No, not necessarily. I can't tell you where they're going to target each major city. What we do know is most likely what will be used in a nuclear war, we're not talking about a terrorist attack, but a nuclear war between the United States, Russia, and China, are intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs. Most ICBMs now, as we've been through the disarmament and such, instead of being one big bomb on a missile, each missile may hold 10 to 12 small bombs, and we call those warheads. And then each submarine can launch 12 missiles minimum. So we're looking at, they will launch a ICBM up into the edge of space. It will basically pop off its MIRVed warheads, that's multiple reentry vehicles, and these warheads are smaller. So we're talking about, Russian is 3 to 5 kiloton. We're not talking about these mega big bombs that will wipe out a whole city instantly. I mean, that if they hit downtown of a major city, let's just pick one for example. I have to say a city as an example. We'll go with Atlanta. If it hit in the center of downtown Atlanta, one warhead from an ICBM, 3 megaton, it's basically going to devastate about a 5-mile area. It's going to leave a crater about 1,000 feet across, 300 feet deep, and the blast wave is going to devastate about a 5-mile area. So if you're in downtown Atlanta, within 5 miles of wherever that warhead may hit, you're basically going to see a flash, and that's going to be it. It's going to be over. Because the flash, the light travels faster than anything else. So the light will appear first, but you're so close that the blast wave is literally, a 100th of a second behind it, along with the heat that will basically vaporize you. Now, if you're out more than 5 miles away, it comes back to the old drill, duck and cover. The instinct you're feeling automatically is going to be to try to look at whatever's happened. Don't look at it. It'll basically burn your eyes out. Not literally, but you'll be blind, your retinas will be burned, and at that point you're helpless. Don't look at the flash, no matter how much you feel. If you're outside, just drop to the ground, cover your neck and head. If you're outside near anything that's high enough, we're talking about close in, you won't have time to try to seek cover. Just really drop to the ground. Drop flat down like a tornado drill, cover your neck and head, and pray for the best. Now, if you're out, so we're talking about the blast basically devastate up to 5 miles. You're out, 7 to 10 miles. Again, don't look at the flash. Duck and cover, but you may have a few seconds to look and see if there's something around you that you can duck down behind or into. Duck in any low spot. Hit a ditch, depression in the ground, behind a wall. If you're inside a building, get away from the windows. Duck away from the windows, because the blast wave that comes seconds after will knock out windows and glass, and there'll be flying debris. Just like you think of it, a tornado or a hurricane, get out away from the windows, get down, but don't run far. If you're out, 15 miles or beyond, again, don't look at the flash. Duck and cover, but you might have 20, 30 seconds, depending on how far you're away. You might have a minute, but get to the best place you can to duck down, because, depending on the size of the bomb, the blast wave will go out quite a ways, and it's what they call overpressure. There will be basically wind and pressure damage to things, and that will pass anywhere from instantaneous, if you're close, up to 3 minutes if you're out at the edge of the blast range. So, you may say, okay, it hit just moments ago. Start thinking, 1, 2, 3, 4. Depending on how far you're away, it seems strange to think, but it may take 3 minutes before the blast gets to you. So don't think, man, it's been a minute and a half, I'm okay to get up. No, stay down. Stay down if you're anywhere near enough to have realized the blast has happened. Now, if you're further out, like we are from a major city, we theoretically will feel if a major city, the nearest major city to us, which would be Lexington, if that was hit, we theoretically would feel shaking, a vibration, almost like there was a low-level earthquake. We might even, supposedly, theoretically, we could hear a rumbling sound. Then a few minutes later, if the blast was big enough, we could very possibly, far in the distant horizon, see a mushroom cloud. That comes back to, a lot of you may have used to see the show that used to be on called Jericho. Jericho was well out of the blast zones, but yet they saw the mushroom cloud off in the major city. Now, even here, where we are, we're talking about quite a ways away. We wouldn't get hit by any air pressure or blast or heat wave. We wouldn't see a light so bright that we'd be wanting to stare at it, because we've got mountains in between. But we won't immediately start seeking shelter. Shelter for the long term, not shelter from the blast wave. But as Mr. Welch said, what do we do? First thing, if you're anywhere near close, and you'll know if you're close, take shelter from the blast wave and the heat wave that'll be coming your way in a matter of seconds and minutes. Now, after the heat and the blast wave goes by, if you've survived, then that's a different matter. Does that help answer your question there, Mr. Welch?
Yeah, most people that are going to be in our area, we're not going to be a target. I mean, you don't have to worry about being hit directly by a warhead itself, but we are susceptible because it doesn't matter how far necessarily we are from a big city. You could be an hour, you could be 2 hours, wind blows and patterns change, and you're still going to have to seek shelter for fallout. So let's talk about what kind of shelter do I even need?
What kind of shelter you need? For the fallout, you need shelter that stops the dangerous radiation. The dangerous radiation for you that survive enough to actually need to consider a shelter is from the dust particles that fall down from the mushroom cloud or have blown from the blast into the air or being scattered by the air. You could be 15 miles out from a blast and need a fallout shelter. So I don't have a fallout shelter. They discontinued those and got rid of those in the 60s. Yes, they did. But here's the thing. If you have time and plan ahead, you can shelter yourself. We know that you've always heard that radiation is stopped by lead. It's true. Lead, it's basically 2 inches of lead will stop quite a bit of radiation. 4 inches of lead will stop pretty much all radiation. But none of us have enough lead around to be pouring 4-inch lead walls and putting them in our house. So what can we do practically? Okay, for practical purposes, cinder block. Cinder block with fill in it of sand or gravel will stop a lot of radiation. It'll stop most of the radiation that would be dangerous to you. Now the dirt, which is the common thing, takes 3 feet of dirt. So basically 3 feet of dirt will stop radiation that is dangerous to the human body. So if you have a house or you're in a city or town and the place has a basement, parking garage, your house, a neighbor's house, your business has a basement, go down to the basement, to the part of the basement that is below grade level, that's below underground, because pretty much all basements are either made from cinder block, concrete block, or poured cement. And then if it's below ground level, you've got that dirt that's shielding you and the cement that makes up the walls. So then your worry is radiation coming from above. So the options are either is to, put something above you that is heavy cement or stone, which is most likely not the case. It's going to happen easily for people. But if there is a floor above you, move anything you can onto the floor above you that is solid and has mass. Stacks of books, magazines, dresser drawers, chest of drawers, piles of material, cloth, bags of dirt and sand, anything you can immediately to cover that area you're in. Now here you see where we're at. We're in a room that appears almost to be like a basement, other than there's a few windows. So if we were here, we would actually see that the floor above us had material on it to help keep the radiation from coming down. Now we wouldn't want to be here in front of the windows. The glass in the windows does nothing to protect us. But, use this as an example. We want to cover the floor of the room above us to stop radiation from saturating in. Now, if you're in a big city, you didn't get killed by the blast, one of the things that protects you is distance from radiation. And if you're in a big city and you're in a place that survived, that has high rises, go up. If you can't go down to the basement, go up. A 30-story high rise, 40-story high rise, if you can get up to the 18th floor, you're getting above the radiation on the ground, and you have enough material and building materials above you in the skyscraper to keep the radiation that lands on the roof of it from getting to you. So basically, if you're in a big city and you survive the blast and go up, get up high above the ground, 150 feet above the ground, with 100 feet of building above you, and you're going to be pretty safe. You're going to do pretty well. Now, the difficulty there is going to be access to water and food, but first of all is to survive the radiation.
Yeah, that's the next thing. I mean, we're going to talk about in our next video some of the important things, some of the most important things we're going to need for shelter. But if you have time, and where we're living, we're going to have time. We're not going to be having a nuke put right on our backyard directly, but we're going to see a mushroom cloud in the horizon, or we're going to hear something over the radio, for as long as the radios are even on. I mean, the power grid may get hit beforehand. We don't know exactly how it's all going to go down, but where we are currently living, we are going to have a little bit of time. Now, depending on radiation level in the air, and you need to get things to measure that, you're going to have a little bit of time to get food, get water, get supplies, take them down to wherever shelter you may have, whether you have an actual fallout shelter, a basement that is secluded by four walls of actual dirt underneath the ground and really, really good, or whatever. But there's other things that you need to be thinking about that most people don't. Is, for one, I think about waste management. You need to be thinking about everyday life things, not just bring some water down there, bring some food down there, but we don't know necessarily how long we're going to be down there, and you're going to have waste issues. So do you have a thing set in place for waste issues? Do you have enough food and water to, not necessarily to pig out and eat as much now as you, or eat as much then as you do now, but enough to stretch out your supplies to survive till you are out? So basically, my next question is, how long do you have that are we going to be in this shelter?
All right, I'm going to back up here for a moment. First, you mentioned the fallout. If you're anywhere immediately near or close to the blasts, I'm talking about less than 20 miles away, you could have fallout as soon as 30 minutes. So you may have 30 minutes before the fallout starts to fall down. Basically, this is going to look like fine dust or snow just kind of falling down from the air, depending on. It's going to be really fine particles, more like a dust, but it's going to be like a foggy haze just falling down. So if you're real close, you may have 30 minutes. I know that sounds bad, but it's good to know you have a little bit of time. If you're out further, 50 miles, 70 miles, if you're blessed enough to live that far from a major city, you could have 2 hours up to 6 to 12 hours. That all comes back to depending on the wind speed, whether it begins to rain out in the city near the blast area, which basically rain helps settling the radiation fallout into the city faster before it gets out. But basically, the clouds go between 5,000 and 15,000 feet in the air. So those high-level air currents are what's going to carry the fallout. There's a number of maps online you can look at and kind of map out where you're at. But you're going to have some time. And it's that fallout settling that's the danger and risk to you. So you have to think, okay, I've got minimum 30 minutes, maybe 4, 6, 8 hours, depending if I'm far away from a major city. So I need to be, as Mr. Wells said, get active immediately. As for sheltering, how long? If it's a worldwide nuclear war, and we're talking about the United States would be hit in multiple cities, the multiple locations, the odds are you're going to have to shelter from fallout at least 2 weeks. Now, I'm not saying, well, because he said 2 weeks, it's been 14 days, we can go outside. No, it doesn't really mean that. That's the minimum if you're lucky to get very little fallout. The general thing is you have to look at basically 30 days in a shelter. In 30 days, with what's called the half-life of radioactive isotopes, in 30 days, if you're not in a blast zone, but in an outlying area of fallout, most of the fallout will get to a level that you'll be exposed to so few REMs or RADs an hour that your body's natural healing process can compensate and you will survive and get past it. But basically, looking at 30 days in a shelter is a safe thing. Now, you got to be careful afterwards to not expose yourself to radiation accidentally. But as for the shelter, you're looking at most likely 30 days in a shelter. But that can be done and that can be survived.
And that's our last thing. I apologize that this is getting long, but next thing is after the 30 days are up, we've used our devices to measure the radiation in the air, and we're good to come out now. I mean, what can we touch? What can we live in? What livestock? What can we eat out there now after?
Now, basically, 30 days have passed. First thing to tell you is don't sleep on the ground. Don't just go out and camp out and sleep flat on the ground, because radioactive fallout is going to be falling on the ground, compacted into the soil, and when you lay there, basically low amounts of radiation are going to be flowing through your body, basically like a slow microwaving yourself. So don't sleep on the ground. Now, any buildings that survived, that the windows were closed and doors were closed, you know, the majority of the fallout will not have come in. Some will, because it's going to be so fine. But then if you go into a building and you can wear a mask and you can sweep out the fallout or wash it out with water, water's a better thing because it'll keep it from getting up in the air. But if you can wash out the dust and the debris, and a building basically be cleaned up and used. Parking lots, ground areas where you wash them off, spray them off. Water will help move it away from you. Areas you want to garden, till it into the ground. Any food you find a canned food that's still sealed, wipe and wash the can off. The food inside will be safe. It's the dust on the outside that's dangerous. As for your water, you should try to filter your water. If you can't filter it, let your water set and settle so that any dust or debris in it begins to settle down to the bottom, and take the water off the top to drink it. And still remember, you should boil your water. Always boil your water to be safe if you don't have a modern filtration system. Any fruits or vegetables that have survived out there that may be still on the vine, those can be eaten. Just be sure to, again, wash them off, clean them off, peel them if you're unsure with a clean knife or something. Animals that may have survived could be eaten. Just don't eat the meat and muscle right close up to the bone. The bone holds the radiation, and try to avoid eating the organs. The organs are what the radiation will accumulate in. And of course, if the animal has any sores or burns on it, don't eat that immediate area around the meat either. Cut the bad places away. But the animal in general, it's meat. The animal's still alive. Its meat's edible, and its meat's safe. Basically, just make sure it's clean, make sure it looks okay, make sure it doesn't smell bad, make sure there's no dust on it, and you can most likely eat it. You've survived that long, and the hard part may be finding good sources of food, but anything out there that's not, broken open will not be contaminated as long as you wipe it off, wash it off carefully. Hope that helps answer a little bit there, Mr. Welch.
Yes, it does. And we don't claim to be experts, but we do know a little bit of what to expect, what to do. And now we realize that not all of you are going to make it. I mean, that's why we feel as Christians the most important thing is make sure you get your heart right with the Lord right now.
Yes.
And we're making this video before these things happen to prepare you beforehand. Don't go into the situation just hoping it doesn't happen, then it happens, and then try to remember what we saw in the video and try to get home and try to prepare then. Go ahead and start taking some precautions now. If you want to build something, or if you want to look for areas that could be used as a shelter, go ahead and start using those now. Go ahead and start saving up some things that you may take right now. And go ahead and even checking dimensions if you're going to have more than just your immediate family in this shelter. Go ahead and start getting your brain rolling now.
Can I say something
yes,
real quick, Mr. Welch? There's a lot of good videos out there recorded by others who are experts, who have had more up-to-date training in radiological specialties that put them out there. But also, if you look online, there's a lot of free PDFs that you can download and print of home civil defense materials to build a shelter in your home, to build a shelter outside in your yard. Those materials have been archived by people with interest. They've been put out on the web for free downloads and free to use. Look at them. There's a lot of them. If you think you might need a shelter, now is the time to prepare. Now is the time to start making one. And there's a lot of good free material out there if you'll take the time to do it. A couple people I like to watch online on YouTube, and I'm not going to name who they are yet, but I may in a future video. They have a very good point. If you're just sitting watching YouTube videos, and you're not doing anything, and you say, oh, I'm concerned about surviving, I'm concerned about surviving. Watch some videos, excuse me, but spend more time getting out and doing. Actually, if you really you care about your family, your loved one, and surviving, get out there, make things happen, do something prepared. Don't be a keyboard commando. Watch the videos, get information, and go act on them. And that's what we've been trying to do ourselves. And he said, get your heart right with God. You know, make things right with God. Be sure that's settled. And with those that you love and you care about, be sure all your relationships with them are where they should be. Because it may happen someday that suddenly they're not around for you to tell them that you love them or that you're sorry.
All right. Well, I hope that helps you. I hope you take what we have and don't just remember it, but use it. Apply it into your everyday routines coming up. Thank you, and look forward to making some more videos for you soon.